Okay, we're going to get started. So, hi everyone again. Welcome to today's webinar. The title of the webinar is 5 Strategies to Differentiate Your Differentiate your team and Win Over Technical Talent. I'm very excited to kick off with you today. My name is Jack Foster, and I am on the marketing team here at Lever. So, just a couple housekeeping points before we jump in. Please use the chat box for any questions that you have. I know that this question comes up a lot. You will get a recording of this webinar tomorrow, so you will have a version of this. Keep an eye out for that tomorrow. If you want to tweet us, please tweet us with the hashtag WinTechTalent. We are going to be tweeting throughout the event, and at the end of the webinar, we're going to be awarding a $100 Amazon gift card for the most useful tweet. At the end of the webinar, you're going to be hearing from our partner and the co-host of this webinar, HackerRank. So Blaine Shields will be joining us a little bit later on to talk about HackerRank. Without further ado, I want to introduce our featured speaker of the event. So David Nason is joining us today. He is the strategic global talent acquisition leader at Infor, and he has extensive leadership experience in both a corporate recruiting environment as well as an agency environment. So we're really excited to hear the insight that David is going to bring about winning technical talent. Today at Infor, David partners with key stakeholders to drive aggressive hiring plans. And he is also a member of several key executive committees at Infor, including diversity and inclusion, compensation, retention, OSCCP, and EEOC compliance. So a ton of experience coming from David. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate that. I love how you threw strategic in there. I like to think that everything I do is strategic. I am good morning, afternoon, and evening to everybody, depending on where you are in the world. I'm calling in this afternoon from lovely Farnborough, England, which is a nice little town a little bit north of London. Today we're talking about winning technical talent. The battle for technical talent, the war for talent. We've heard these terms if you've been in and around recruiting for any period of time. It all seems so aggressive and so daunting. And why is that? Here's some interesting statistics for you guys. So by 2020, there will be 1.4 million new tech jobs, but only 400,000 people will graduate with degrees in computer science, and that is a phenomenal gap. Years ago, it was interesting, they used to talk about, started in nursing, believe it or not. They talked about dead openings in nursing, dead openings in pharmacy. And today people talk about dead openings in tech. What does that mean exactly? That means that there are simply not enough people who have the skills, knowledge, abilities, and attributes to do roles that companies want to hire them to do. The number of computer science jobs is growing twice as quickly as the national average. Again, that goes along with that first point, right? I mean, that's a phenomenal statistic. And here's the thing that all of you guys know. If you are trying to hire developers, people with tech talent, our developers are receiving 20-plus calls every single day from recruiters. If they're getting that many calls a day, you can imagine what their LinkedIn feed looks like, right? So how are people responding to this, or how are employers responding to this? So this is interesting. 82% of employers who hire engineers struggle to fill openings. Well, of course they do, right? There are just not enough people out there. 95%, I mean, that's a statistical anomaly. The reality is that if people, any company on planet Earth, not just software companies, right, but companies who have technical talent, developers, web designers, et cetera, right, in their company, virtually everybody, right, 100%, it says 95%, but that's virtually everybody, will want to hire engineers in 2016. But only 20% of employers or 20% of employers are not confident their efforts will be successful. Those are some scary statistics. If you guys are I imagine the audience today, you guys joined the call to learn a little bit about maybe a different approach, or maybe just an approach at all. Maybe you're desperate out there. So we're going to talk about some things that I think are really interesting, and they should be personal to each and every one of you here on the call today. So how do you differentiate your team? So here are 5 strategies that you guys can put into practice immediately to make a significant difference in your lives, your colleagues, and at your companies. So number 1, job descriptions. I don't even like the word job descriptions for a lot of different reasons. Number 1 is that they don't describe the job that someone's going to actually do, and we're going to talk about that. Number 2 is people need to have a seamless user experience as it comes to applying for jobs. There is incredible breakage out there. If you don't know that term, what that means is somebody who starts an application, but then they quit before they actually hit submit. Okay. Number 3, transparency. When I talk about tools, when I talk about processes, I live by 3 rules, and they're this: it's visibility, accountability, and collaboration. And we'll talk more about that here as we go along. Number 4, leveraging your team at your company. It's interesting in our world, right? A lot of times the recruiting of hiring of people comes down to us. I haven't hired anybody. I haven't found anybody, and it's your fault. It's your fault. That key, that collaboration, that third area there, your whole company, it's everybody's job to hire. We're going to talk about that. And the 5th thing is tying a closing strategy to your candidates' motivations. I say this all the time, and I speak frequently on the subject of hiring. I've trained probably thousands of recruiters, and one of the things, one of my key areas is to precept here is seek first to understand, and then appeal to others based on their own self-interests. If it doesn't matter to them, then guess what, guys? It doesn't matter. So let's dig into it. Job descriptions, which I still hate that term, even though we have it on the slide. So these are more fun statistics. By the way, I would, if you're having any challenges in the environments that you work, grab these statistics, okay? Many times business leaders, numbers, right? We find a lot of times if we lead with some statistics, those things can be eye-opening. So 72% of hiring managers say they provide a clear job description, but only 36% of candidates say that they're provided with a clear job description. So why is that? Well, to me, it comes down to one very simple thing. Hiring managers are generally pretty good at telling you what they want to see in a candidate, what they want to see in a resume, but they're generally not very good at telling you or articulating to you exactly what the person is going to do in the role. So here are 3 things that I use at Infor throughout my career. Number 1 is what's the environment like. So if you're all out there looking for tech talent, right? So just because somebody has had the same experiences, the same knowledge set, if you will, right, as what you're looking for, that doesn't mean that they're going to be successful in your environment. The environment, the manager that somebody is going to work for is at least as, if not more important to ultimate success as the actual role that they're going to be performing. So number 1, what's it actually like to work for this particular hiring manager? I call this is an interesting strategy. I call it creating a pull strategy for that hiring manager. Companies are really good at articulating their corporate culture, right? Those big things they put on their website, and we're beautiful and everyone loves each other and all that kind of stuff. most of you, I'm sure, you can define what your company culture is. But can you define what the organizational culture is like? Can you describe what the culture is like for the team, for that individual hiring manager? What's their communication style? Are they email people? Are they text? Are they phone people? How do they communicate? How do the best people on their team operate? That's some of the ways that I try to coax this stuff out of hiring managers. Pick the people on their team that operate in the way that you find to be most successful. Like, what are they like? What do they do all day long, right? Number two here is what the candidate can accomplish in the role, right? So again, if it's not important to the candidate, right, then ultimately you are at risk, right, of losing that candidate to somebody else who does a better job of that. Make a personal connection with candidates. Again, everybody that you're talking to is talking to potentially up to 20 other companies. If they're seriously in a job hunt, right? How many of you guys, well, of course you can't answer me, but I'm sure you've all been in the situation where you call a candidate or you've been nurturing somebody for a period of time, excuse me, and all of a sudden they start interviewing with you, and the next thing you know, they're also interviewing with 5 other companies, right? So if you're not making a personal connection, if you're not discovering what's important to that candidate in their life, in their career, in their role, at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to, number one, appeal to the best folks. Number two, you're not going to be able to secure the best folks for your company. And this is a little bit of my work in action. So at Lever, who I have a really fun relationship with over the past year and a half since I've met them. I came out and met with their executives a little over a year ago and talked about blowing up job descriptions. And I'd invite you guys as well to come up with something creative if you'd like to. So at Lever, they call them impact descriptions instead of job descriptions. And I know it might be difficult to see here on this screen, but go to their website and check out their jobs. And what you'll find that Lever's doing a really great job in articulating what exactly the person is going to do in the role, what the environment is like, and making a personal connection. So this is a fantastic example of how Lever translated this philosophy and made it match for them. And again, I encourage everybody here on the line to get creative, get with some other folks at your company who are really passionate about this and making a difference at the company, and come up with taking this strategy, if you will, all these things that you learned today, and translate it to your own environment. Number two, a seamless user experience. So what is that like? So you want your, I say this all the time. A lot of things I think I say them a lot because they're really important. I used the term breakage earlier. So one thing that I think is hugely important is that I want to make sure that every place that a candidate interacts with my company digitally, that experience is excellent, that it is something that is in line and in some cases enhances the company strategy, right? And is as easy to get through as possible while still providing the necessary information that you need about a particular candidate, right? So your volume of applications will drop if your process, if your system, if your tool isn't really intuitive and easy to use. 60% of job seekers say they quit an application due to its length or complexity. So that may be a difficult thing for you to solve sitting in your seat, but it is absolutely necessary. If you haven't done this yourself, I'd invite you to get a friend, pick a job, go onto your company's website, go to your career page, okay, and have your friend, while you're sitting there, walk through the application process, and watch what it is that they have to do. Now imagine that maybe your friend is fantastically talented, Java developer or something like that. But imagine, try to look at this through the eyes, okay, of a passive job seeker who is being hit up 20 times a day. Is it easy for them to get through? Are you also able to get the necessary information that you need, right? I am not going to tell you that I am unbiased because I am. I love the Lever application process. It's simple, it's beautiful, it's intuitive. It doesn't require the candidate to think about anything other than what they are trying to communicate about themselves. They don't have to struggle to get through the process. It's simple, it's easy. They can type things in and instantly parse their resume. They can use LinkedIn to immediately get in front of you. Again, any barrier, any place that anybody interacts with you digitally, you want it to be excellent, and you want it to be really, really easy for them to get connected to you. Here's another bit that I think is hugely important, and we're on the phone today with Lever and HackerRank, which is also a tool that I absolutely love. So this is an interesting bit that we didn't actually pull some statistics in here, but I was part of a couple of different studies, and Google also has done a study that's pretty famous about the bar, if you will, right? The necessary requirements or the necessary skills and knowledge attributes, et cetera, that a candidate has to have in order to get through the process, right? What HackerRank does is it allows you to evaluate those candidates in a way that is that's really pretty unique and a beautiful thing as far as I'm concerned, because people don't mind, candidates don't mind if an interview process is hard. Okay, they don't mind if the bar to entry is hard. What they mind is when tools are cumbersome. At Infor, I'm almost embarrassed to say that before I arrived, we would send, I say we, the proverbial we, it certainly wasn't me, but hiring managers and recruiters would send tech talent a Word document that included in the document this test, if you will, that they had created. Awful, terrible. I mean, I can't. Like I said, I'm embarrassed to say. Actually, people did it, and I can't believe that they ever would. But HackerRank is a beautiful system for evaluating technical talent. There's a couple of different ways that you can do it. They have these really fun contests that are super cool, where people just go on, they engage with the tool in an environment, in a contest, which is fun, it's interactive, they're competing with other people, it's really enjoyable. That's one way. You can also develop very, very simply with your HackerRank team an evaluation that's specific for a role and responsibility. Our experience with the tool is that number one, the number of people who actually start and can complete the process versus that Word document is far higher. The information that we're getting about candidates is far better, and the better candidates, the more qualified candidates, the people that we want to hire, are the ones who shine in this process and enjoy it, and it actually becomes part of our engagement strategy, which is really cool. Transparency. So my mantra, it's mine. You can adopt it, steal it if you want to attribute it to me. That's fine too. But accountability, visibility, accountability, and collaboration. So transparency. So what does that look like exactly? Transparency on your team. It's interesting. People hold back. They're afraid almost to expose things about themselves or their company or the organization that they're part of. And I'm going to invite all of you to toss that out the window, right? interviews and recruiting calls and different emails that we push out to people that where you are the entire strategy is getting information or getting stuff from the candidate. Okay, it's mainly a one-way type of a flow, and I think that's a mistake. I think that we need to number one, our value proposition. Your company, okay, you offer something that's unique in the marketplace. I imagine, and I hope this is true for all of you, and if you don't feel this way, then I'm going to invite you to think hard and ask some really great questions of your colleagues at work. Somebody founded the company that you work for, the organization that you work for. It doesn't matter if you're public sector or private sector. It has an actual purpose on the universe, or I hope that it does. It does things that are unique, or you have a unique product or service, something that you do that either nobody else can do or they can't do it better than you. That's the kind of thing that I believe is the most, well, number one, it's just true. It's transparent, right? But it's also the thing that's actually at the end of the day going to be something that lands with your candidates, right? And if you're hiding things or afraid to expose various different things to candidates, I really think that you're going to be missing out on a much better experience. You need to have a tool, right, that also provides that visibility. Well, what does that mean? If you don't have a tool where you can see all of the interactions, everything that happens during a hiring process in one place that's visible to everybody, how are you going to solve problems? We have this happen all the time. I'm not getting enough candidates. Well, yes, you are. Well, if you can't actually show your work, right, that's a difficult conversation. And your work isn't simply the people, the candidates that you submit, right? You want to be submitting the best people from all the different individuals that you evaluated for a certain role. So you want to be able to show your work, number one. Number two is, sometimes it's not our fault, right, guys? Maybe a lot of times it's not our fault with those problem hiring managers that we have. Maybe they're not getting back to us very quickly. Maybe they're not providing us with great feedback. Well, the leaders, right, of those organizations, how are they supposed to know that, right, if you don't have a place to show that work? If you can't identify a challenge in the cycle, then you can't solve it. There's generally just a handful of reasons why a job goes unfilled, right? And I'm sure that you guys, know what they are, right? It can be salary, it can be territory, it can be the profile, right, or that job description that you created is just too narrow in a certain, market. But again, if you don't know, if you can't point, if you're not having one place where you can collect all that information, if you can test various different things, right, out there in the marketplace and gather information, gather statistics and so on to be able to show them to the organizations that you support, how are you going to be able to, identify the challenge, solve it, right, and get better? So, with candidates, we talked about this a little bit. So, I talk about creating, people use different terms for it. I call it a unique hiring proposition. I challenge you to share that vision, to learn and absorb what it is that your company does that is unique and different and special. So I grew up in supply chain software, and then I moved into retail software. And I had a group of companies that I supported, and I could about pitch you advanced inventory supply chain software right now, as well as I could back in the early 2000s. Why? I made it my job to know, what did the technology do? Who are we selling to? Who are we not selling to? What did the tech stack look like? What were implementation cycles like? All of those various different things, so that you can have a true business level conversation with the candidates, that you're talking to. Now, there are people on the phone who are probably not in technology. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your company does. It doesn't matter if you're in the public sector as well. Your organization that you represent, okay, you have unique value, and I encourage you to discover what that is and turn that into a story that you can talk about with candidates. it's another key thing here too. You want to be able to collect, right? I'm a huge data hound. You want to be able to collect all of that information, all of that communication flow back and forth between you and the candidates that you support in one central place. Okay, so again, you can identify when there are challenges. You can learn from your experiences. This is a tough thing here, but I'm going to tell you this is my own. I really truly live by this. When I'm out at conferences, I can tell you the number one complaint that I get from people in the audience who come up and say, I was a candidate for, and typically I'm not giving these talks. These are normally, talks to audiences, not audiences of candidates necessarily, but people come up to me all the time and they'll say, the number one complaint is they didn't hear back, okay, from a recruiter or hiring manager, or they did hear back, but they got some kind of a lukewarm, watered-down response. Now, as you heard earlier, a passion area of mine is diversity and inclusion. I have a whole song that I actually do about OFCCP, if you don't know what that is, the Office of Federal Compliance, Contracts and Programs. And so I'm super passionate about we have to stay within the law. We also have to stay within what I would consider to be, professional courtesy for sure. But you know what, guys? I mean, even though we do a lot of our work over the phone and on computer, those resumes that you get, those names of people that you see on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever else, that represents a human being that is no different than you. And they deserve courtesy and respect. It's hard to give feedback, but I'm going to encourage you to do so. I probably certainly on a regular basis, I don't know whether it's monthly or whatever else, I'll have the candidate who will argue with me. And you know what? And I get it, right? Maybe they're trying to get a job, or maybe I shared that vision with them. They got really excited, so they want to come work with us. And I respect that for sure. But I professionally, I will stick to my guns, and I'll let them know, and I'll say honestly, you know what? And I tell them my story. I say the number one thing that I get negative feedback I get about our industry and recruiting is that recruiters don't get back to people. And they don't get back to people because this is a difficult conversation to have. But I think it's really going to serve you well. This is not the right role for you. And I totally appreciate, that you're interested in us. And I absolutely, will make sure that we find a way to, stay in contact, keep the relationship going if something, changes or is different. But you truly will be better off knowing this today. I know that's hard. Maybe some of the words that I used, maybe those were, helpful. Happy to maybe share some other strategies or, talk to some of your colleagues or the folks that you work with around strategies as it relates to this. But I really believe in it. Remember, at the end of the day, there's a person on the other end, of the phone and the email, and they deserve our professional courtesy and respect for sure. Coding challenges. So I talked about this a little bit before. So these are really cool. If you don't know much about HackerRank and their coding challenges, this is a super cool way that you can. They've got two different kinds of them. They've got public challenges and they have private ones. So, and we've done both. We've had, and what does that mean? So there are various different themes and so on. If you're a customer of HackerRank or thinking about it, ask your customer service rep or ask your sales rep about some different types of coding challenges that you might be able to participate in or create on your own. So I did one once that was hugely successful and really fun for veterans, which was really cool. And it's a way to, again, it's to extend your brand, right? To engage with the technical audience in a way that's both challenging and fun and exciting, and they're really cool. So if you haven't seen one, you don't know that much about it, I'd encourage you to to do some research and talk to some of the folks at HackerRank. So leveraging the selling skills of your greater team. So this is cool stuff. So in my world, and I fly the flag of this every day, everywhere I go, hiring and recruiting is everybody's job, okay? It's really interesting. I think one of the most challenging environments that we all find ourselves in recruiting is what I call a consumer paradigm, right? The hiring manager gives you an order that you then deliver and they consume it, right? I mean, it's like pulling up to a drive-through and, and a lot of times I'm sure you've all, been in this situation. It's like your hiring manager, shows up with, $5 at the drive-through for McDonald's, right? And they're asking you for like, duck flambe and filet mignon and all this kind of stuff, right? Collaborate with your hiring manager. Build that unique hiring proposition. Okay, before you even open up a role, some of you heard this term, an intake meeting. Okay, it is a requirement at Infor, and I've done this the same thing in the other environments I've been in for. I don't care if you've done 5 of the same job for the same person just last month. Before the recruiting process starts, you have a conversation or a face-to-face meeting with the hiring manager, okay? Even if they think the job is exactly the same, and hey, guess what? Maybe 95% of it is the same, but you're going for that 5%, okay? A vivid picture of what it's like to actually be in that seat. If you have the opportunity to do a rotation, if you have an opportunity to go and actually sit in the organization that you're hiring for, I would highly, highly encourage you to do that. Watch how they live, eat, and breathe. When you know that, okay, you're going to articulate the role better. You're going to find better candidates. Your candidate can tell when your team is collaborative, and isn't that the truth? Are there people out there who enjoy working in an environment that's not collaborative? I don't know if I'm prepared to admit that that's probably true, but maybe it is. If you're in that world, maybe that's your unique hiring proposition, right? Everybody's mean. If you're mean, then maybe you love it here. But again, that's pretty rare, right? The relationship, I think, between you and your hiring manager is the most important. And there's some bullet points on here. You guys can read and you can see this afterwards. Nobody will care about you unless you show that you care about them first. So something to think about here is, are you delivering anything else to your hiring managers that are of value to them in their world other than candidates? Think about that for a second. Is your relationship with your hiring manager one where you're always asking them for things or demanding kind of things from them, like feedback and so on? I'd encourage you, if that's the case, or just to even think about that maybe. If you're not delivering anything else to them of value, your relationship is going to be transactional. That's not the most conducive, paradigm, right, or relationship for success. So, empowering the rest of your team, introducing candidates to several team members. I think this is a beautiful and really successful thing when it's done, and done well. It's great if you have a recruiting tool that also supports collaborating and empowering other people in the organization. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. If I didn't say so at the beginning, but I've been doing planes, trains, and automobiles for 36 hours, so getting a little hoarse. Excuse me. But again, introducing your candidate, having a very holistic process where your candidate meets different people that they're going to be working with, other people in other organizations potentially. I always say that everybody who interacts with a candidate should have a defined role, for sure, and that's really important and necessary. But again, hey, hiring decisions and employment decisions are two of the most important and personal decisions that people will make. And you're looking to set yourself apart here, right, from everybody else. And one of the great ways to do that is by involving the greater team. Another bit here about HackerRank and how that helps to facilitate collaboration inside of your organization. When we talk about making things as the qualifications, okay, and the evaluation process, again, that can be difficult. Candidates don't mind that. What they mind is they mind a process that's cumbersome or difficult to get through. When candidates come to you, through HackerRank or go through one of those evaluations, that's information that can be shared among lots of different organizations, right? It gives, as a recruiter, if you guys weren't developers, and most of us aren't, it's hard when you're talking to somebody whose expertise, right, is in this role, to be able to provide, value in that context when, you really don't know. Well, you guys probably know the difference between, Python and Mongoose, but I might not. But with having this evaluation, this arms you, okay, with the information that you need to provide that value to your hiring managers, as well as establish yourself as somebody who is an expert, right, in what you do. I love tools that are integrated with each other, and just so happens it's a beautiful thing that Lever and HackerRank are fully integrated, right, which is easy. So it doesn't make not just easy, but it is the most optimum situation to have everything all in one place, for everybody to see, as opposed to, having 5 or 6 different things that you interact with that don't talk, right, to each other or not visible to each other. We talked about this in the very beginning here, right? Seek first to understand and then appeal to others based on their self-interest. And if you don't care first, they're not going to care about you. And you may say, oh, those are pithy things that people say, stuff like that. Well, I'm going to encourage you and invite you to really think about that and absorb that into your world. We're talking about competing, okay, with how many other thousands of companies for 400,000 people for 1.4 million jobs. You're competing with everybody else on this call. You may be competing with my organization. And if you're not appealing to somebody on a mission level, I think you're going to lose out, right? And I think there's a big, big opportunity here, okay? The values of your organization and the organization and the hiring managers that you support, okay, should be consistent throughout your process. And the better that you get to know your hiring manager and really understand what that true strategic, value and personal value that they have in their world, the better that you're going to do. That pull strategy, right? And I say this to hiring managers all the time, and I'm going to throw it out here again. I tell them our goal here is to create a pull strategy for you. We want people to know who you are and want to come work for you, right? And we want our process and the things that we follow, we want those to be, we want everything that we do in the recruiting and hiring cycle to be consistent with those values and that purpose. Well, I said it before and I'm going to say it again. Leverage your team, okay? Interviewers, hiring managers, other people at your organization can be more effective as a salesperson or a representative of a role than you can a lot of times. I'll give you a little trick. One thing that I love to do is if I have a hiring day or if I have several candidates that are going to a particular office, I share the name and the picture, as most recent of the pictures I can, of the candidate with everybody at the office. And so when my candidates come in, hopefully there are no software companies on this call. Did we ban SAP and Oracle? Maybe that's wrong, but it's a beautiful thing, and I've had the most insanely fantastic feedback, from this, because a candidate walks in the door and the person sitting behind the desk says, "Oh, hi Jackie. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in today. Your first meeting is at 10, right? Yeah, excellent, fantastic. Here's a bit of water, and if you could sit over here." And the candidates are like, "Oh my gosh, how important am I?" They walk down the hall, and people say, "Oh, hey Jackie, I'm happy that you came in today." Can you imagine what it would feel like, right? Can you imagine how your experiences can be different by doing something like that? That's just kind of one tidbit that I like to throw out there, but I love that. I also love after-hours meetings, company events. A recruiting strategy is not a transactional. The job is filled and it's over, right? Typically, it's super rare. I mean, if you're doing executive search or something like that, maybe it's fine. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about development talent, right? So your strategy, right, should be something that has short-term, medium, and long-term goals. If you're developing relationships with candidates by having them come out to, company events, having them, come out to softball or I don't know, book clubs or whatever, wherever you guys, interact. What a different paradigm. I mean, not everybody is going to be. I say a candidate's not a candidate for a job unless they're qualified, available, and interested. Well, what if they're not available? I mean, what if they've got, I don't know, a bonus coming up, or they're on a project they're super passionate about, and they're not going to leave until they're done, and that's not until October, right? So what do most companies do? What do most recruiters do? Forget about them. Maybe they'll put them in their tickler file, for the fall. Well, what if you didn't just do that, right? We're talking about creating a personal relationship with candidates. Well, what if you found out about what some of their interests are, and what if you invited them to do some stuff with the company as is appropriate? And obviously, this is something to talk about your colleagues and partners at work about in developing that long-term strategy. But, it's really hard in our world. We've all heard this before, that it's our goal, right, to move this paradigm of recruiting from something that's reactive to something that is proactive, right? We're always operating from a deficit. When somebody comes to us and they have a job to fill, that means that job is typically not getting done now. So you're already operating, right, in a fairly, if not very stressful environment. So it's just an idea to kind of get your creative juices flowing. What can you do to develop a relationship with a market, right, or candidate marketplace, so that when you do have a job that would be appropriate for a certain person, or when you do have an opening at a future date or whatever else, what if you already had candidates, right, for the role? I mean, imagine that. And maybe several of you on the phone right now are like, "Oh, I've got this all figured out," and that's awesome. But I challenge you to dig deeper, be creative in what you do. The snappiest in-mails, okay, will get you better response. But if you take a personal approach to your company and what you represent in the marketplace, if you take a personal approach to your hiring managers, your relationship with that hiring manager, and if you take a personal approach with with candidates in the marketplace, your results will be fantastic. And guess what, guys? This kind of stuff, this is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So, hey, I appreciate everybody's time and listening to me, and I hope that you got a lot out of what I had to share, and I will turn it back to the Lever team.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for sharing so many actionable insights from how to do intake meetings with hiring managers and changing up impact descriptions. I just would like to remind everyone to please submit your questions. We're going to go through a couple other slides, and then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. So throughout the presentation, we heard David talk about making sure you have transparency in your process and collaboration in your process to give a good candidate experience. And I just wanted to talk about a couple of ways that you can elevate your candidate experience by using Lever. So one of the things mentioned in the presentation was at mentions. So we really want to make it easy for anyone involved, to get everybody involved in the hiring process. We want to make it as easy as possible. That's obviously going to help get more people involved. So at mentions, you can actually, if you can see it there on the bottom of the slide, you can actually mention other colleagues in Lever so that it makes it very easy to collaborate. So if you want to get someone involved in the hiring process, or someone else internally, or you want to ask someone a question or have someone meet a candidate that's coming in, you can do that all right within Lever. They get notified, and we make it very, very easy, so you can do that in the tool. Secondly, the snooze functionality. So David, you were just mentioning at the end of your presentation that sometimes timing is not right for a candidate, and it's really about building a relationship over time so that when timing is right, you're able to bring them in. So we make this very easy in Lever with our snooze functionality. Let's say somebody says, I'm not ready to talk right now, but I definitely would love to speak in a couple of months. You can actually snooze them and make sure that once the timing is right, you get notified, and you can pick up that relationship right where you left off, and make sure that again, you're just giving the candidate, making them feel like you knew where you left the relationship off. So again, back to candidate experience. Feedback reminders. As a hiring manager, this is something that I really love in Lever. Right after an interview, it's really important to get feedback as soon as possible so that you can continue moving the candidate along. So within Lever, you're able to set up feedback reminders. They can go out, as often as you wish to make sure that anybody involved in the interview process is getting their feedback in quickly so that you can then make a decision and continue on with the process. So really important, as David keeps mentioning, all of the competition out there for tech talent and top talent. This is a really important thing to be thinking about so you can continue to keep the candidate engaged. And finally, offer letters. Again, along the vein of keeping things fast, you can create offer letters right in Lever and get them out quickly. So those are just some of the ways that we elevate the candidate experience. You can request a demo of Lever at lever.co. These are just some of the other wonderful partners and customers that we work with. And I wanted to pass it over to Blaine to talk about HackerRank.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So first of all, everyone, thanks for the nice words already about HackerRank. We did cover a little bit of an overview of what HackerRank is, but just to dive in a little bit deeper, especially on this sentiment of collaboration and communication, at its heart, that's really what HackerRank does help to provide. We do increase essentially the collaboration and communication between recruiting and engineering teams. It's so frequent today that your recruiters are looking through resumes, they're trying to identify top talent based on what the engineer is telling them to look for. And sometimes it's a very difficult process, right? You'll look at a resume, you think the candidate has a skill set, but what we essentially provide is a platform that allows you to initiate a coding challenge or coding assessment. We can evaluate that code that the candidate submits to see if it's written correctly, is it answering the solution, and that question can be something that the engineering team creates. So if the candidate has the skill set to pass that particular test or assessment, they have exactly what the engineering team's looking for. So essentially what we are doing is increasing that collaboration. So you as a recruiter, you almost feel more confident or more empowered to pass along the right candidate. You know that they've passed the assessment that the engineer has created. Therefore, it's worth their time to hop on that next stage of the interview process. So essentially, our role here, my role specifically, is on the customer success side. So each and every day we're working with customers to make sure they are finding that efficiency and optimization within the hiring workflow. So depending on the type of position, the seniority level of the candidate, there's often different workflows where you would initiate some sort of HackerRank challenge. Typically, there are about 2 places that a HackerRank assessment is usually included. There is an initial phase, maybe before the resume review, before a cultural phone call, just to make sure that they have that basic skill set that the team looks for. Once they pass that, maybe they do go through that cultural interview, and if they pass that, typically it goes over to the hiring team. And oftentimes that's sometimes done on-site in a whiteboarding session where the candidate will be asked to write something on a whiteboard. We provide a product called CodePair, which essentially allows for a remote whiteboarding session. So you can actually see the candidate code in real time, you can interact with them, and you can actually run their code with them. So usually by plugging in HackerRank in those 2 places, we really add a lot of efficiency to the hiring process, ensuring that only the top candidates or the candidates that you know have the skill set, those are the ones you're bringing on site. So essentially what we're doing is helping to tighten the hiring funnel at each stage. So my team works really closely with our customers to make sure that we are finding that efficiency, that optimality within the hiring workflow, and ensuring that the candidates that they are hiring are retained because they know they've gone through those specific tests applicable to that organization. So that's traditionally where we work with customers. We also have a HackerRank Jobs product, which is more of a sourcing tool. We have a large community of over 2 million developers that simply come to HackerRank to take these coding challenges for fun. So many of them are job seekers, many of them are just trying to hone up on their skills, but we allow access to those individuals, allowing you, again, to post a private coding challenge or test to those individuals. Ones that are interested in working in your organization, they can take that test, and that can serve as that initial benchmark to see if they have that skill set that you're looking for. And then obviously, through the integration with Lever, they automatically get put into your pipeline. So everything I just described, we do have an integration with Lever, which makes the process even more seamless. So rather than having to log into HackerRank as a standalone platform, you can go ahead and initiate coding challenges. You can see the results. You can initiate more tests through the jobs platform, all through the Lever integration. So we find that the partnership we've had with Lever has been great, and we really help to streamline the workflow even more. So that pretty much sums up HackerRank. I can go ahead. I think we're going to open it up to Q&A. I don't know if the Lever team wanted to jump in here at the end.
Yeah, thank you so much to our partners over at HackerRank and Blaine for going through that. We excited to have you on today. So yes, we have time for a couple of questions. So David, the first question to you is, what if you have a candidate that does have a bad experience and is starting to be very vocal about that? What are some things that you can do to try to turn that around? Do you have any ideas there?
Yeah, so interesting. I think that there are a couple things. So the first thing I would say is that there are some candidates out there that, or just people who are, why don't we just say this? We're not talking about those rare individuals who just kind of seem like they exist to make our lives miserable. We're talking about somebody who had a genuine issue. You know what? You know what you can do? You can apologize. You can say you're sorry. That goes a long, long way. I think if you're responding to people like on Glassdoor or through Kanunu or some of these other social media platforms, I think that it's difficult. I don't advocate saying things that are not true for sure. You can, however, apologize. Say some things that you do or do better. If you're talking about like on something like Glassdoor has some strategies for answering things socially. If you're a customer of theirs, or even if you're not, you can call them. But you know what? I've picked up the phone on many occasions to pretty much just apologize. Goes a long way,
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Thanks.
Yeah.
It does make sense. It seems easy enough, right? But yes, it
I
does
know.
go a long
I know.
way.
It's hard to do.
We're getting a couple of questions around, and maybe we can send this out afterward, where the source of some of the statistics that you shared are from. I don't know if you have that offhand, or we can send that after the fact. But a couple people asked me.
I think that's probably the best thing. Yeah, we'll provide it to everybody.
Great. Okay, yeah, for a couple people asking for that, we'll shoot that out after the event. Somebody asked, I think we have time for just one more question here. So somebody asked, when is the right time, when do you recommend bringing the hiring manager into calls with passive candidates? What are your thoughts on that, David?
I'd say pretty soon. I mean, if your hiring managers are engaged, and as we talked about, right, there's different ways to get them engaged in the process, but I would say soon. And I think that call needs to be a specific, you need to strategize with your hiring manager and give them some tools for that conversation. So if the candidate is passive, and they're passive because you didn't do or your role properly, right, it's going to be more difficult. I think that it's also if it is purely like just selling, of a candidate, then your hiring manager is also going to be in a situation where, what they say may fall on deaf ears. So I would say one really important thing about having a phone call, having a hiring manager call a passive candidate is let them know, number one, yes, sell them. But number two, ask them some pointed questions about their background and how it's related to what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Because if you don't do that, if you're purely in selling mode, as you guys have all experienced, it seems like there's nothing that's getting through to this individual. Ask them a couple of questions. And guess what? All of a sudden, they're engaged. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, again, that's a great tip for the audience. So that pretty much brings us up to the hour. So I really would love to thank HackerRank again for co-sponsoring this, and of course, David, for being our featured speaker. Some really amazing tips and insight for the audience. So thank you so much, and we hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining.